Welcome to the mystical kingdom of war. You have been placed in command of an elite squadron of warriors assigned the task of outwitting the sinister Wizard of Wor. As you descend further and further into his diabolical dungeons, you will encounter deadly warlings and maybe even the wizard himself. Your only weapons are your trusty laser, your radar scanner, and your agility and cunning. You will need them all as you attempt to beat the wizard on his own turf and earn the title of Warlord Supreme. Prepare now, and then let the battle begin.
I'm out of spite. Ha 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 ha.
Welcome everyone to the Atari 5200 Super Community video series. Today we're going to talk about Wizard of Wor, which originally came out back in 1980. It was published by Midway, designed by Dave Nutting and Tom McHugh. This was a maze-type game. You have a single or two-player simultaneous option, which I really enjoyed the two-player one.
Yeah, I bet.
I was murder. But anyway, as always, we have the rest of the crew here, well, except for Mr. D'Angelo, because he pulled a Rick on us and didn't want to come, so.
Hey, oh, what?
And oddly enough, Rick is here.
Rick is
what
here.
happened?
Surprisingly.
Surprising. Well, we have the mighty Matt D., our resident journalist.
Hello, everyone.
And we have Mr. Rick Reynolds,
Hello.
podcaster extraordinaire.
Well, podcaster anyway.
Podcaster. He's about as bad as me with all these podcasts you're doing, man.
I know, it's getting crazy.
Of course, I quit a bunch of mine, so, take a break. Anyway, so let's start off with the arcade version of Wizard of Wor. We'll start off with Matt. What kind of memories and what are your thoughts on the original Wizard of Wor arcade game?
Well, I can't say I have too many memories of it. The first
Okay,
time I
we'll go
ever
Rick. Never mind.
played...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The first time I ever even saw a cabinet for it was at a retro arcade in Ohio, The Place. It's since closed down, but
Yes.
I think I mentioned it before. But and I know Willie's done a
That
bunch
was
of
Carrie's
videos on
arcade.
it.
I knew him.
Yeah,
Carrie
Carrie's
Cheney,
arcade.
Carrie Cheney or something in Cincinnati.
Yes,
Great
exactly.
arcade. It was great. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was. It was really great. I miss it. But I played it there, and I'd heard of it before, but I hadn't ever played the arcade game before that. But, I didn't think much of it when I first played it. I just thought it was kind of a basic maze game. But when you get into it, there's a lot of subtle things about it that make it a lot of fun. Like I love the radar thing on the bottom middle. That's a really unique gameplay mechanic where you really need to use that, where the enemies will disappear and teleport around. It makes it a lot less frustrating once you realize how important that is.
Yeah.
And the two-player simultaneous gameplay makes a huge difference too. Just like with Joust, like if you have a friend playing it with you, it can be either a cutthroat thing or a cooperative thing, and that adds a whole lot of fun to it, I think.
Oh, yeah.
It's a blast of a game. It's one of those that the more I play it, the more I like it. That's a great thing about doing these videos and these podcasts is you get to give these games more of a chance and really see what they're about.
How about you, Rick?
Yeah, this game, I remember seeing it in the arcades back then, and I don't know, it was intimidating to me. Like I saw it as kind of sinister or something.
Sinister?
Yeah, and like maybe a game that the older kids played. I saw it and thought, if I try to play that, I'll last 20 seconds and it'll just suck all my quarters out, and I'll have, so I need to go play other games. So I don't remember playing it much back in the arcade era, but because of that, it's kind of had this weird fascination for me. So I definitely play it. I don't play a lot of arcade style games in my basement. It's not like I'm down there every night or anything. But when I go down and I play some arcade games, I definitely pull this one up almost every session on my main cabinet. Yeah, it's just one of those games I like to go to again and again. I'm not very good at it, but I do enjoy it quite a bit.
Yeah, I first saw Wizard of Wor in my local arcade growing up. And what really attracted me to it to begin with was, with Berserk and it talking, Wizard of Wor talked also in the arcade. And I really enjoyed the wizard laughing at you. It wasn't ha ha ha. It sounded like ta ta ta. Which really,
it is a funny laugh.
Really cracked me up. Ta 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 ta.
I think
what?
that was another thing think it was another thing that kind of made it seem out of my reach somehow, because I couldn't understand what it was saying ever. Like it was just making these sounds, and I'm like, okay, this is just too weird. I can't,
Well, that's because he was drunk in the maze,
I guess so.
Can't talk very well. But the graphics of the arcade game, they're very vibrant, and I like all the different colors they use. A lot of basic colors in the game, but they're used quite well. I like how the Gar Wars were yellow with the little red eye, and you had the Thor Wars and the Burr Wars. A lot of wars in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Warluck, the Wizard of Wor, was a blue wizard.
The
Warling,
Warling,
yeah,
Warriors.
The Warriors.
Yeah.
But I like how the mazes would change each time you would clear out a level. And one of my most favorite mazes in there is probably called, I think it's called the Arena.
Yes.
Or it's all open in the middle. I love that maze for some reason. There's another one, I don't remember what it's called, but it has a central area. It's like a little hallway right in the middle of the screen. It goes north and south, and there's like two walls at the very end, so it makes like a little captive area right there. That's where I like to go to try to hide out from the enemies as they're running around and just shoot back and forth. If you're being very nice and cooperative with another player, you can actually have one facing one way, one facing the other way, and just keep firing, and nothing will get you.
Yeah.
But usually I end up turning around and shooting my fellow player in the back. I feel so guilty, but not for long after I get all those bonus points. Yeah. Then I go camp out in front of their little cubby hole, wait for them to pop out so I can shoot them immediately. I was a very bad person to play games with. I still remember the first time I discovered that. I was playing with my brother, and first time I played the game, I was like, oh, this is going to be kind of cool. We can play together. Da, 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 da. And I mess around, and I'm shooting, and I hit him. He disappears. He's like, what the? I was like, oh.
Right.
And that was it.
And it gives you like 1,000 points for doing that, I think.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, even more incentive to have you shoot each other.
Die. Anyway, I'm getting off track here. I also like the music that it would play. That it was kind of a haunting kind of tune. I think it was like the Dragnet theme or something like that.
It was, yeah.
But the way it played, it was like, it's just that real low bass sound. If they had the bass really cranked up on that machine, it would make the machine vibrate, which was pretty awesome. Like force feedback on this thing. Made it a lot more exciting. I gotta lay off the sugar. Holy crap. Anyway, let's talk about the port to our lovable little 5200. We'll start with you again, Matt. What do you think of the port to the 5200?
Well, I think it's a great port, but to be honest with you, I don't think there is a bad port of this game. I was comparing it to the rest of them, the 2600, the Commodore 64, the Bally AstroCade.
Oh, yeah.
They're all good. The Bally AstroCade one is like really good.
Yeah. Oh,
I think they called it something else, the
Incredible Wizard.
Incredible Licensed, or what the deal was with that. But I think all the ports are good, and the Atari 5200 one it's no slouch. It stands right up there. It's got all the features. It's got 2-player gameplay. The graphics are just as vibrant as the arcade game. The sound is pretty spot on. It doesn't have the voice, but I think they would have had to, with the 5200 being the way it is, I think they would have had to stop the gameplay every time he talked, and that would have been kind of a drag.
Yeah, like they did in Berserk. Yeah,
that
would be kind of disconcerting.
It would slow it down too much, so it's probably for the best that they left it off. The only other thing it doesn't do that the arcade game does that I noticed was the arcade game, it always starts you with, if you don't have a 2-player game going, it puts a computer player on the left-hand side.
Yep.
But the 5200 one doesn't do that.
Nope.
I would have liked to have seen that, but other than that, I really can't find fault with it. It's a great port. I was pretty happy with it.
How about you, Mr. Rick? What do you think of the 5200 port?
Similar things. It's a decent port for sure, and I agree with Matt. By the way, it's hard to find a bad one of this game. It seems like there's really good ones out there. I did notice some things. I think the fugue song is a little off. Maybe the harmony tone isn't right. Something about it isn't the same. I don't know. I noticed that
more like It's more like an organ on the 5200, I think. Doesn't it sound kind of like an organ, like a church organ almost? I kind of feel like it does a little bit.
Yeah, but I think maybe it's a 3-note thing, and they're only doing 2 of the notes, or their harmony is too close, and they're doing thirds when they got to do something else in the harmonies. I'm not sure what it's doing, but I noticed I'm like, that's the right tune, but it's not quite right. There's something quite not quite on there. Yeah. So, but yeah, the game is the port's like I said, pretty good. You definitely, I definitely did a whole lot better once I switched to a digital control.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Oh yeah.
Instead of the analog controller. So yeah, if you have the opportunity to do that, it's definitely worth that for this game. Let's see. I did notice the graphic of the guy. He's got a real wide stance with his legs there when he's walking around.
Bow-legged.
Yeah, he does.
I thought that was kind of funny. And yeah, I was going to talk just a little bit about gameplay and stuff like the. I get myself kind of balled up with strategies on this game, and this is true of the arcade as well as this port, where it's like I really want to set up in a corner somewhere or something and start picking them off as they come by.
Yep.
But then it doesn't. Seems like it's not too long after, and I start getting ganged up upon, and I can't turn quick enough and get them, because in general there's some mazes that give you a little bit better on this, but in general most mazes there's not going to be these nice long corridors for you to just fire at them, right? So if you're sitting there in a corner somewhere, they're going to peek out into the corner, and you've got just a half a second to nail them. And so if you got to get turned if they're coming in the other direction, and they start coming in 2 directions. And so then I'm thinking, well, okay, I need to wander around the maze a little bit and get a little more into this. And then I get killed because they start moving. They start moving so much faster than you do, right? It's not very long into any level that all the monsters are moving a lot faster than you can. And so you got to take that into consideration. You definitely want to hit as many of them as you can while they're moving slow at the beginning of each level.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to camp out very long because their speed will increase pretty quick.
Yeah. If you don't take them out, then the game ramps up the difficulty quickly. You're right.
And particularly on the first few levels, the blue bull wars, I think, are the blue ones.
Yes.
Their movements they tend to be so erratic as they're hopping around. Like I just want them just keep going, get into the corner so I can shoot you. And they just kind of bounce around, and they're wandering here and there, and they give you this false sense of security. So you all right, I'll go after you, and then you get killed. So yeah, it has that kind of gameplay to it that's can be kind of frustrating, but it makes you want to come back and do it again and again.
Well, you would think, with the capabilities of the Atari 5200. The graphics, I think, could have been a little bit better. They're kind of plain looking for this port, in my opinion. They are, but it's still a very passable game. One of the strategies I used to do when playing this game, either in the arcade or any of the home ports, is I like to hang out close to the door, and I'll pop through the door real quick. If a monster gets close to me, it's like a little escape path for me. Sometimes it doesn't work too good when you have a monster pop through the other side of the door, so you got to keep an eye on the other side of the screen to make sure they don't do that.
Yeah, and that door stays closed for a little while.
Yes.
Right after you use it. So a lot of times, if I happen to be up near there, I'll take the door, go through the door just so a monster doesn't, right? So I can keep them from coming up behind me. But I noticed in the 5200, it's been a while since I've played the arcade again, but I noticed in this that the door goes back to accessible again pretty quickly.
Yes, it does.
I had memories of it being maybe a bit longer when I played before, but I could be misremembering that. And another thing I was going to say, you mentioned about the voice and how the voice goes between. On Berserk, they have that little voice and it freezes between levels. Mm-hmm. I was thinking they probably could have done that here between levels, right? They probably could have, as the game finishes a level, have him insult you and laugh at you, and then you move on to the next one.
Yeah, that's pretty much what he does, is taunts you. He says something about popping you in an oven, I think, at one point.
Yes.
That's hilarious.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mainly played this on my Atari 800. I had the Atari 800 cartridge, which is basically the exact same game. Mm-hmm. So it was, kind of nostalgia for me to play it on the 5200 because I used to play it all the time on my 800. And of course, you got to remember, you got to plug in your joystick into port number 2.
Right.
When you're playing by yourself. I keep forgetting to do that, so I'm sitting there moving my joystick around and nothing's happening. It's like, what's wrong with my game? Until I remember you got to switch it over to the other side.
I was watching a pretty popular YouTuber because I usually check out YouTube videos on the games that we do just to see other versions and things. And he couldn't even figure it out, and he just gave up. He just assumed his 5200 controller was broken because everybody says, "Oh, they always break."
Right.
It's like, well, this guy's got hundreds of thousands of views on his videos, and he couldn't figure out how to start the game.
Do his research like you're supposed to.
I know, right?
Oh no.
Yeah, when it started and I couldn't move my guy, I looked around a little bit, and then it wasn't very long. I think you have like 9 seconds or something like that for your guy to exit the little little safe spot he's in. Well, I realized the yellow guy popped out. I'm like, oh, it's on that side, and I just plugged it in on the other side. I didn't think it was that difficult, but okay.
Well, yeah,
No,
yeah.
and if you do read the instructions, it's the very first thing they say in there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Willie, if you're reading this, plug it in the other port, you dummy. Yeah, right there it is.
Yeah, my copy said that too, Willie. It was interesting. Yeah.
Of course, the radar screen, that definitely helps out with the game, especially when you're trying to avoid the Gar Wars and the Thor Wars, which they can turn invisible so they get in line with you. Not having that radar screen would make this game extremely difficult, I would think.
Yeah.
But it would ramp up the fun. One of the things I used to like to do when I played this on my Atari 800, I used to put like a little index card over the radar screen when I played other people.
Oh, wow.
Which adds a whole other level to
geez.
this thing. You don't know where these guys are coming from.
Huh.
Adds
Yeah,
a
I
whole
imagine-
new game element to it.
I imagine that gets interesting when it's down to just a couple. You shoot
yeah.
one, and who knows where the other one is? He's just hear the
somewhere
bump,
around
bump, 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 and it's another.
But I like how when the Warlock comes out, it plays this really funky kind of sound effect as the Warlock is jumping around the screen. And man, that thing is hard to hit on the 5200 version.
Yes, he teleports constantly.
Oh my
Boy,
gosh, it's like you got like maybe a second or two before he disappears. Like, no.
pretty much, yeah. And
the
you want to
Wizard-
get him because you get that double score if you manage
Oh,
to
yeah.
nail him. So you want to keep that going. It really rewards you for streaking those together.
Now, when you say he disappears a lot, right? When
yeah.
the warlock just kind of disappears and runs around, right? It's the wizard that actually teleports
Yes.
around his position.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And he's shooting, and he constantly.
Oh yeah. He's tough.
Oh yeah. But I like it when you do hit the wizard. It makes that really cool sound effect. The screen starts flashing and stuff.
Yeah, the screen goes like black and white, like a black and white flashing. That's a
Oh.
little. I think it's a pretty cool special effect.
Oh yeah, you end up rolling around the floor.
Yeah.
Having an attack or seizure or something like that. But yeah, I love it when you shoot the wizard in this game, and that sound effect and the way it flashes the screen. That's a really cool sound effect.
Yeah.
And of course, it tells you double score dungeon. I love that.
Yeah, I wondered about you guys in terms of experience with this game. In the arcade version, I'm not sure I've ever seen the wizard. He's really rare, at least in my gameplay on the arcade version. I see the wizard reasonably often, let's say in the 2600 version, and I was able to see him on the 5200 that I played, and I kind of wondered if the home ports, pop him out a little more often again, because it's a home port. It's not trying to suck more quarters out of you.
Yeah, I think
be.
so. It could be, because I remember when I was playing it in the arcade. I played it in MAME earlier today, and the wizard didn't pop out nearly as much as it did when I played it on the 5200 later on.
Oh, the arcade game is much harder.
Oh my gosh, yes,
For
it
sure.
is.
I think that's
Speaking
actually.
of it,
I was just saying, I
Sorry.
think it's actually pretty good. You're selling this to someone. You want to experience the full game. I could even see that being an option in a home port. It's like adjusting the frequency of how often you'll see some of these characters, because you're going to get the warlock like every second board or every, I don't know. He comes out pretty regularly.
Yeah, he does.
And it's going to be rarely that you get the wizard, and I could see that as an option that would be like, okay, we want to provide it. It's not so much easier, but just the chances of finding the wizard are going to be a lot easier on this one, because if it's the same as the arcade, you might never see him. So
right. Yeah.
So, did you guys get some high scores?
no, I mean, I got a score. It's just not very high.
Well, what'd you get playing the game, Rick?
So terribly. On my using the analog stick, I could only get 1,500. I
Say
got to
what?
dungeon 1,500 points. I got to dungeon 2. I could not get that. I could not control him with the analog stick. I got to dungeon 3 with the digital stick and got to 7,100. And I still don't think that's a very good score, but that, you know,
Well,
that's what I did.
Okay. It's not bad. It's okay. Not
not
bad.
bad.
Couldn't crack 10. You know, there you go.
Okay, Matt, what'd you get? And I hate you for this score, by the way.
Well, I did use a digital controller. I think I used the 2600 joystick on it, but I got 52,700.
Oh, man.
With the analog stick, my scores tend to hover around the 20,000 range. It's a good game. Like I said, I got into it. Once I get hooked on it, I'll sit there and I'll play it for an hour straight, just over and over until I get a decent score.
I will win. I will win this competition.
I'm kind of obsessive like that with these retro games. I get hooked on them.
Well, you know, using an analog stick, I got about 19 something. And then using a digital stick, I got about 30K.
That's respectable, for sure.
It's not that great. Now, our missing guy, Mr. D'Angelo, the new Rick, he got 42,700.
Yeah.
The new Rick only in not showing up, not the new
That's
Rick in
correct.
scores, clearly.
No. He will get chastised on the next episode. Anyway, what are your final thoughts on Wizard of Wor? Any final thoughts, Matt?
It's another must-have arcade conversion for the 5200. There's no reason not to have this, especially with a two-player gameplay.
Oh, yeah.
You don't get a lot. I'm trying to think if there's a lot of two-player simultaneous games in the 5200, and I can't think of too many. Joust, obviously, but this is a great one to play with a pal. And it's like I said, it hooks you if you just give it a chance. It really hooked me, and I'm pretty happy with it. And one other thing I want to mention is it's worth checking out the instruction booklet. If you're a fan of the game, it's worth checking out the instruction booklet for the Atari 800 version of it, because it goes into a lot more detail. It gives you some gameplay strategies and things that the 5200 booklet kind of skips over.
Really?
So that's over. Yeah, I saw it on Atari Mania. They had the other one. I think they were different publishers. I think Rockland Software published the home computer version, and
Yes.
CBS published the 5200 version, which is curious to me because, like Willie mentioned, they're exactly the same game. So obviously they're programmed the same program pretty much. So I wonder how that works. But the manuals are quite a bit different. So it's worth looking at the home computer one. It's pretty neat. And I just love the box art for the Atari 5200 and 2600. They're basically the same, but I love how it's got the wizard and the warlings sort of surrounding the TV screen. I just think that looks really cool.
It's a very unique cartridge shape too.
Yeah, I ordered a complete box copy on eBay just because I liked it so much. I have no reason to have that. I have a multi-card, but it just looked so cool. I was like, I gotta have that on my shelf.
You're like me with my Star Raiders. I got 2 complete box Star Raiders for the same reason.
Oh, collecting.
How about you, Rick? Any final thoughts on Wizard of Wor?
This is definitely a game that I'll pull out whenever I'm doing some 5200 gaming. I'm going to sit there and play a handful of games. You got to pull this one out too. It's a really good, fun game on the system. It's another one of those. The 5200 was bringing the arcade home, right? And here was this, like, again, in my mind, kind of exotic kind of arcade game. I didn't see it in too many places, but when I did, it intimidated me. So having this at home on your 5200 is great. So yeah, it's definitely a get for the if you're a 5200 fan, you don't have a complete collection yet, you definitely want to find this one.
Yeah, it's definitely a favorite of mine on the system. I didn't have a 5200 back then. Mine I got 2 or 3 years ago, and it was definitely one of the earliest games I had when I did have cartridges for it, before I got my multi-cart. So it is definitely one to add to the collection. As a matter of fact, our sister podcast, the Atari 5200 podcast with David and Glenn and Steve and I forgot the other guy's name. Boy, they're going to hurt me something fierce. They did an episode on Wizard of Wor that goes in real good detail on a bunch of stuff. So I'll put a link to that down in the video notes case someone wants to go look at that, take a listen to that podcast about Wizard of Wor. So, until next time, everyone, don't get lost in the maze and let the wizard get you.
Bye, everyone.
Yep.
Yep. Listen to you. Yep. Say bye.
I thought you were done. I
am done. Say bye.
Bye, everybody.
Oh, my gosh. That's my Rick.
The Wizard of Wor thanks you.
Looks like we're going to be down a guy.
Michael can't make it.
Oh, wait a minute. He's online. Let me see. Let's harass Michael.
Yeah.
Hey, new Rick.
Uh-oh.
You joining in?
He's the new Rick.
He's the new Rick. Oh, Michael. Oh, he just logged off.
Nah.
Oh, wow.
I ain't talking to you, man.
I'm not talking to those 5,200 guys. They're the worst.
No doubt. Willie, I was just watching your video where the horse race goes around. You wind it up.
Oh yes, the Derby race by Epoch.
Somebody posted in there that they had something like that where you turned it with your finger and it was a race cars.
Yes.
I had that. I think it's this Tomy Pocketeers or something like that.
Yep.
I had the race car one.
Yep, I've got one sitting right here that's got the Coleco brand on it. It's the same thing, just came out a little bit later. It's more, it's more colorful. I did a video on that as well.
Did you? I couldn't find one on that, so I'll have to look.
Oh yeah, it's on there. I did a little video on it.
Yeah, that was I remember playing with it as a kid and not knowing, like, what am I supposed to do now? like you just move your finger around and they move around. I couldn't exert any control on the cars, and I wanted to. I was like trying to influence the race somehow.
Trying to influence the race. It's all on magnets on tracks. It's actually got a pattern. Every car will win eventually.
Is that right?
Yes, because they switch. There's a pattern to them. If you watch them and keep spinning them around, you'll see that each car will end up winning the race at a certain number of laps.
Yeah, you're saying that, and that sounds familiar to me. I think I might have noticed that as a kid.
Little Willie took big advantage of that in the lunchroom.
Oh boy!
I bet you the red car will win. You don't want those cookies, do you?
I was going to say, was there gambling involved?
Oh, yeah, man. We gambled cookies and pieces of cake. I was a fat little kid.
Nice.
I won a lot.
Beautiful.